Okay, hello. Part three of the just looking at the immune system and our current situation. So let's just get straight into it. I'm going to look at it slightly differently. What I've decided to do is to look at a bit of a background of why we would have, I suppose, pathways towards weakened or dysfunctional immune systems. And then we'll follow up next time with things we can do about that in our present environment. So I think we'll start with up until about 10,000 years ago, human beings had about six random genetic mutations per generation. Now this has accelerated massively, and over the last 10,000 years this has increased by 100 times. So we now have 600 random mutations, genetic mutations per generation. So this is due to changes of environment, and we don't really know if these mutations are beneficial or not yet. So if a gene's frequency is more than what a randomized mutation would be, then behind that mutation there must be some sort of benefit. So we've got these 600 random mutations happening. Now if the frequency of these random mutation, or the frequency of in the population of genes is greater than the randomized mutation, then there must be a benefit to it. Now this is something that we call positive selection, and it is we know this by looking at a population, saying, okay, is there more than 1%? If the gene present in more than 1% of a population, and that would be known as positive selection, confirmation that it is greater than just the randomized mutations. Now the other thing we have to consider is that evolution doesn't really know or recognize being older than 49. Now that's obviously an average, but it doesn't recognize being older than 49. So the genes can be neutral, beneficial, or deleterious to us before 49, and then also neutral, beneficial, or deleterious to us after 49, these different mutations. Now there are only two selective factors, and these are survival survival and reproduction. And it's only between a period of -9 months to 49 years. And this is known as the evolutionary selective period. An example of that would be someone with Alzheimer's at 70. That actually has no impact on the evolutionary development. So there are 4 survival reproductive levels that can be behind the appearance of any disease. That would be, first of all, my survival and reproductive capacity. We then have my direct children, so my offspring. We then have genetically related members of the family. And the fourth would be pathogens. Now, the disease must be of benefit to at least one of these. And now, if more than 1% of the population has the disease, then there must be a benefit in the disease or the pathway to the disease. Otherwise, evolution would have thrown it out. Now, let me give you an example. There's a lot affects a lot of the work that I do. If we have about 21,800 genes in our as a human being, it's about that. Now, more than 300 of those genes are related to the susceptibility of depression. Now, this is a huge amount for one disease. It's normally much less. Now, nearly all of these genes are genes of origin. Now, that means that they're very, very old as well, which means there's been a lot of time for them to be thrown out or to be wiped out, and they haven't. So this is a really good example of positive selection within our genes. Now, of all the 300 genes related to depression, they are all pro-inflammatory. Now, this means that they are immune system genes. So they're cytotoxic. That means that they're toxic to living cells. So when we look at people with depression, we tend to see the following traits. We tend to see that they don't live longer, they don't reproduce more. So the susceptibility is not maintained for the myself. Now, their children are more likely to be depressed. So they do not live longer or reproduce as much. And that's meaning susceptibility is not maintained for direct children. They tend to isolate themselves or withdraw from human contact, and this is the behaviour of someone that is loaded with pathogens. They isolate themselves to stop the contamination of those pathogens. So you could see that the depressive behaviour, the depression, is actually an immunological disease. And with people with depression, they tend to eat less, they are less social, and so you could say that they're sparing energy, and sparing energy that can be used for the family around them. So this would mean that they're actually protecting their genetically related family. It's a social disease. It's not a selfish disease. They offer their own health for the health of the family. But this is not in our time. The system is made for pathogens. But as so many of our genes are related to this behaviour, the susceptibility is very high. In fact, it reacts on everything. It's not the genes that makes us ill. They simply create the susceptibility. It is then the context that actually makes us ill. Now, we looked at energy distribution in the first talk, and the first parameter of this, or certainly should be, is the context. Now, in our society, our context has moved from a monometabolic to a multi-metabolic. So this means that we now eat and drink many times a day rather than once or possibly twice. So we used to get hungry, and then we would go and find food. And then the energy distribution in place meant that the brain and the muscles, not the energy. So let me say that again. So when we go to find food, we eat, and the blood goes to the gastrointestinal tract and feeds all the organs to do their job. We're in some sort of rhythm. So the energy distribution is in place. The energy is at the brain and the muscles, and not energy to the immune system or gut. Okay. Now, when we get thirsty, or when we got thirsty, more accurately, we would do the same. We would go and find water, and then that would feed all the organs, and we would be in rhythm. Now, when we were in danger, we also did the same, and when we were cold, we did the same. So all of these are monometabolic danger factors, and we have evolutionarily developed solving problems for these. So that is how it was. How is it now? Well, we discussed previously the energy battle between the brain and the immune system in modern society. And now we can add the pattern of having, say, 5 meals a day, or 5 times of eating a day. So you also have the 5 post-meal inflammatory responses. So we have this conflict now between the brain, the immune system, and the gut, all trying to be active at the same time, and it's just not possible to do. So the other conflict, or the second conflict, is that we probably have psycho-emotional conflicts going on at home, or we have liver detoxifying due to smoking and alcohol. We've had 6 cups of coffee. We've got a sedentary lifestyle. We've got a mortgage or rent to pay. Now, where should the energy go? So you can say that now we have multi-metabolic danger factors rather than mono. We will dispose of everything to maintain life or viability. And the brain and the immune system will always win in a multi-metabolic environment. So we do not have the evolutionary developed solving problems for multi-metabolic danger factors. And everything else will be disposed of. Now, the order of disposal, so to speak, of everything that isn't the brain and the immune system is the disease. There is only one sense that's actually connected to all the other senses, and that's the immune system. The immune system is always active. And the senses have a positive biofeedback, which means that one sense is activated, then the others will all become more sensitive. And now the senses produce an emotion. Now the emotion is a homeostatic feeling. It's a deficiency of something. So if the deficiency is water, then the emotion is thirst, and it should lead to movement to find water. If the deficiency is heat, then the emotion is cold, and so it should lead to shivering, which is movement. Now, if the deficiency is cold, then the emotion is that it's too hot, and it should lead to move to shelter. Again, movement. In fact, if the deficiency is safety, then the emotion is danger or fear, and that should lead to movement away from danger. But instead we get thirsty and we just go to the kitchen. There's hardly any movement. We do the same with, well, in fact, we don't even get hot or cold anymore because of our central heating systems, and we've got good clothing. And we have fears, but we can't move away from them because they tend to be tied up within our jobs or our environments, our home environments, and we have to earn money and we have to stay within socially constructed boundaries. So we don't get to move away from these fears. And next time we'll look at how to use these human strategies to solve some of our problems. Now, we also have things like toxins in the environment. I can't go too deep into that because of the nature of how these talks go out on social media. But if we just say that there are toxins, there's many toxins within the water we drink, the air that we breathe, what is in the air nowadays, the food. There's a lot of say pesticides and things that are, and also other things that are going into food at the moment, and also there's radiation, electromagnetic radiation, for example. There's been big changes to our environment over the last environment of nutrition over the last 50 years. We've also changed the amount we exercise and the type of exercise that we do. Now, the changes to how we engage our social engagement system. So this is the third nervous system that I'll do a totally different talk on with will involve Laura in that as well. But the changes to this is that we no longer give eye contact in the same way. We tend to have our eyes in a smartphone, and we don't tend to look at people's faces so much, and there's a big lack of understanding, really, of the importance to health and the immune system, to simply being seen and to being heard. And it is, remember, the context that makes us ill. So right now we have a context of isolation, lack of touch. We have masks, so this social engagement, this idea of social engagement is taken away. We can't see the micro movements. We can't react to how the face is giving off. We don't receive this from others, so someone isn't received. We have over-sterilization. We're killing bacteria that we actually need, shaking hands. We need this for our microbiome. Microbiome is incredibly important for our health. And we have a lot of fears. We have a lot of, work is threatened. We're not allowed to work in some cases. Creates financial difficulties. And there's also a difficulty in knowing what to believe. It's there is a narrative. There's a very clear narrative that we get given. More and more people like to then find maybe other sources of information so they can make up their own minds of what they think when things don't make sense. Those sources seem to be less and less able to find alternative information at the moment. So I think I'll bring it to a close there. So I think then what we'll go into next time is what we can do right now to be healthier. Yes, to do with specifically the present environment, but then these are also things that will benefit us all generally in health, and maybe for us to see that there is a slightly different model of a human being. Okay, thank you.